Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Don, it's been a minute. It's the day of the monthly close, which is a religious holiday for price action traders. But we're here nonetheless to talk about BTC, ETH, ETF, Memecoins. A fair few things have happened. So how are you? What's new? What's up?
I'm decent. A little bit exhausted, but otherwise, all right.
Exhausted from missing all those videos, eh?
Oh yeah. It's been a struggle. No, I mean, as you know, I got married, so that I think is a good excuse to know.
And you
Uh,
didn't think to invite me.
uh, I mean, you were there, so.
Sorry, I'm just trying to turn people against you as if you haven't had enough of that in the last
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Oh yeah, it's been wild. People have been really fucking angry. I
Yeah.
usually enjoy it because it's like I have a little bit of a troll in me. But that was a little bit much. I was like, oh, I have kicked the beehive a little bit too much.
And the Beehive kicked back in the
Oh
form
yeah.
of making Twitter unusable, but also green candles on some of these alts. I also think, in general, as we've discussed before, people love figureheads when it comes to markets. Oddly enough, like especially with crypto Twitter involved in the whole social media element, it's more of a performance slash game show a lot of the time. So it's not enough to just manage your own book and trade, etc. You need like a public figurehead to like embody the bullish case and embody the bearish case, and it kind of gives you a unified figure to rally against when you need reassurance in your positioning, or when you're just I guess when you need to express yourself in one form or another. Like if you're really bullish and there's like a social media element to it, you're going to find the bearish guy and make him the target of your tweets and so on and so forth. And it works the other way around with Capo, for example, right? When everyone was bullish and you wanted to troll someone or meme someone or find a common cause with other bulls, you would find the figurehead of the other side of the market and have a go at them, essentially. So you occupied that role for the bearish altcoin side during that window, and it wasn't fun because, as we can tell, and in general, as has been the case, the market is very much focused on altcoins. That's where, on meme coins specifically, that's where all the altcoin trading is. They've been the strongest performers. That's where all the rotations are focused. That's the kind of meta slash narrative for this cycle. So when you get someone who comes out and says it's over, basically, or it could be over, or I'm bearish, or I'm shorting, etc., that's a very large pool of people that you're essentially going against. I think that's probably the best. I mean, look, I don't want to get too analytical about this. I feel like those VCs who laugh about meme coins and write like 20-page essays, even though it's not really that complex. But if there is some reason to it, I really think that's it. Like the market likes meme coins for very good reason. The market has an expectation that meme coins will continue to go up. A lot of those participants are quite late to meme coins in general, so they have a very direct interest in the sort of trend continuing. And when you get someone who comes out and argues against that, there's not going to be you're not winning any popularity contests with that.
No, not really. Did you really say the market likes coins for good reason? Because
Well,
I don't think there's any good reasons
no, I
there,
mean the
but
good reason is the performance, right? It's
yes,
like how they trade.
as
Like the
as
one, go on.
typical with crypto.
Yeah. I mean, what else is there, right? Like
Yeah.
we've been here for
Um,
7 years. We haven't really done much slash made much, and whatever so-called we're always one cycle away from the app that's going to onboard billions of users. And the closest thing we get is like Coinbase app for buying and selling, or Phantom for buying and selling meme coins. And remember all these theses like, oh, you won't even be able to tell that there's like a blockchain involved and the app will be so good and so on and so forth. That's clearly not happening. So the good reason, of course, is speculation based, but that's kind of by definition because there is no other good reason. Also, I wanted to mention on that front, we'll talk about this in slightly more detail in the news section. But when you were having one of your many back and forths with Ansem, who's going through a bit of an interesting arc in his own regard at the moment, more
yeah, I've heard.
recently.
I've heard he's been getting strung up as well, right
Yeah,
next
the
to me.
tides. I mean, I think it's actually a good thing because he's obviously the main character celebrity for this cycle. But the fact that people are willing to criticize him, including large, sort of more prominent members of our community, if you will,
Oh, did
versus
it happen? Because I
yeah,
haven't
yeah,
been
I
on Twitter,
did.
so I'm not up to
Oh
speed
yeah,
at
I'll
all.
catch you up. But I think
Okay.
that's a good sign. The fact that it's not in the past you get like a main character and all the Prominent accounts kind of just not say anything, and then after the fact be like, hey, that was kind of fucked up, huh? It's nice to see some real-time discussion at the very least. But all of that to say, one thing that I found myself agreeing with is when you were mentioning that, well, essentially the market retardation as an all-time high, and the counter argument was, well, how retarded is it if you're in the best performing assets and sort of trading memes, especially if you have like good entries or that's essentially been your trading oriented focus, as opposed to someone who feels smart and instead they're long like DeFi 1.0 or ETH layer 2 coins, etc., etc. Do you think there's any merit to that argument? I think one criticism that I could level and in general was made at you, never in good faith, of course, is that the meme coin disparagement is less compelling than it would otherwise be, because from a trading point of view, that's been kind of one of the best calls. That memes are going to outperform, memes are going to continue to outperform, there's no rotation to so-called quality, so on and so forth. So grouping that with retardation doesn't make much sense because that's been the best trade. What do you think of that?
I mean, at the end of the, like, basically when all of this started, right, when we had the whole like Bitcoin rally, I made a post on Twitter. I was like people are gonna skip ETH, people are gonna skip everything besides like Bitcoin and memes this cycle. It's exactly what happened, right? Like we got like this whole like meme mania. I didn't expect it to be this big, to be quite honest, but it's kind of like, it was kind of predictable, I think, in a way, given how the last cycles have been playing out. But what I meant when I said like, hey, this is like the retardation is at all-time high, is that back then people actually did it ironically, right? People were like, okay, I'm buying this and it's gonna go up. I know it's dog shit, right? And the reason why I'm saying like the people that are now trading these things are completely and utterly retarded is because they actually start believing that this is the new thing, that like memes are gonna change the world, whatever. Like complete and utter, like that's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? Like obviously memes are gonna be around and you're gonna be able to trade memes and there's gonna be good price action on memes, but not necessarily and I think just generally not on the coins that are around right now, right? Like I don't think the coins that are like popular right now are gonna be popular in the next cycle or in the cycle afterwards. If anything, they're going to be an afterthought, right? And I've had this argument every single cycle with people that like the older, like these kind of like meme coins or whatever, just flavor of the month, whatever it is, will not be interesting the next cycle, right? And I think at this point right now, people are just like, hey, I'm actually holding quality. Like I'm holding blue chip memes, whatever the fuck that is supposed to mean. And they're actually believing it too, right? Like there's no defensive, hey, I'm buying this because like the price action is good and I think it's gonna go up. It's more like I'm buying this because I'm guaranteed to make some money. And I think just general the attitude has shifted greatly. So I'm going from like, hey, people are gonna skip like the other coins in between Bitcoin and memes and go to memes. I'm going from that to people have done that and people have gotten so dumb about it that they're now actually convinced that they're holding something that is worth anything. And I think that is peak retardation in a crypto sense. Like because you can convince people, but not for long, but you can convince people that like DeFi 2.0, DeFi generally has a use case and it's going to get big, right? And that can happen over multiple cycles, but with memes, it's a little bit of a different story. And there's a few examples of this too, right? Like if you look at how Doge has performed this cycle compared to the last one, and I mean Doge, I think is a little bit of an outlier because it had like that whole Elon rally, which basically kickstarted the whole meme season thing. But like Dogecoin being one example for like an old meme that didn't perform well this cycle. SHIB underperformed Pepe and With and whatever the fuck by multiples, right? So you have all of these older memes that just basically did jack shit. And the only reason why they're even up is because people are like, hey, this hasn't rallied, so let me just buy it because the other things are up 10x and there might be a rotation play going to happen, right? Like, so basically I'm saying people are holding dog shit and they're actually believing it's not dog shit, whereas at the start of the cycle and the start of the meme cycle, it was people were holding dog shit and they knew it was dog shit. They were just like convinced that they could sell it to someone dumber down the line. And I think the people that are buying those now are the people that I just talked about, the dumb people down the line. I could be wrong on that. And if you can push like Bitcoin up to 100, 150K, I could see like even dumber people come in. But I think for right now, where Bitcoin price is, you've reached very, very high levels of just complete and utter brain rot, in my opinion. So it's very hard to attract more people to like basically what I see as garbage.
Right. Yeah. So it wasn't like a trading critique per se. It was more.
No. I mean, if you're
expectations of the future and stuff.
If you're trading something that moves a lot, like who am I to say you shouldn't be trading it? I think in general, like that'd be a dumb thing to say, right? It's the retardation thing is just how people are acting, and this is just like a sentiment thing. I think honestly, and I mean, this might sound like cope, and I'll completely take that argument, right? But I think that the meme trade, the meme coin trade, and this is something that I tweeted about the moment it happened, kind of got bailed out by the ETH ETF. Because you're gonna, like with an ETH ETF, right, and with a move into altcoins again, you're basically gonna give a bunch of money to ETH holders, and ETH holders are generally more interested in buying other coins as well. Like Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ETF people in Bitcoin, if they get rich, what are they gonna use their money for, right? They're not necessarily like
Bunkers,
some of them,
ammo,
like legit,
Trump
like
campaign donations.
they fucking hate altcoins, right? They hate everything.
Sure.
Like the ones that have a bunch of Bitcoin anyway. The ETH holders a little bit different, right? Even like the bigger ETH holders, they usually have like a widespread portfolio. So if you give them a stimulus check of sorts, right, by just enabling a new crowd of participants to buy ETH, they might sell some of that ETH for whatever memes, for other altcoins, and that I think lifted, like had that short-term lift that we've seen. Like WIF went up like, I don't know, like 20% or something. Pepe went up quite a bit. And that's, in my opinion, was pretty straightforward just based on the fact that it's an ETH meme coin. And ETH was like not, like Pepe was performing well. ETH was, even though ETH was kind of taking a beating and Solana was taking center stage. So the moment ETH stops taking a beating, that was like a pretty good bet, I think. So I'm like that's why I'm saying like, hey, if you're trading this stuff, this completely not to be fine. But if you're believing in it, I think you should really take a step back and actually analyze what you're doing, because you're trading dog shit at the end of the day. And if you hold dog shit and you can give it to the person next to you for twice the price, right, that you bought it for, I mean, fair enough. But at the end of the day, like if you're someone that's holding dog shit and no one's gonna buy it from you, you're shit out of luck. And I think that's gonna be the landscape once this cycle slows down / ends. A lot of people are gonna hold something that is very clearly not worth anything.
Thing is, even if you weren't holding dog shit, the way altcoins trade, you should assume it's dog shit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Still trade it that way. That's the thing that I always find puzzling with new paradigm for meme coin type arguments, is that the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate that this time around these altcoins are those with multi-cycle longevity. You're not the one making a sort of radical claim by saying that I think the hype thing of this cycle won't be hyped or that relevant next cycle. That's like the default. That should be your baseline empirical assumption, and then you'll need really strong evidence to the contrary to move away from that. And I don't think that shouldn't be as controversial as it is, right? So one thing I'm going to bring up on the chart now, on the screen rather, is this tweet from Huma Capital. And it looks like he blocked me because I can't see the tweet anymore. That's really funny, actually. Hold on. This was fine yesterday. Did he go private or did I get blocked? Wow, that is so funny. This is such a good tweet. Down. Oh no, these posts are protected. He follows me, but he's gone private. That's really unfortunate. Anyway, what this tweet is that it showed which altcoins have outperformed BTC since the bottom, and it's a very, very short list. There's like 10 of them or something. I don't know. I don't have the exact look back period in mind, but it kind of tells a story of what alt BTC looks like in the long term, or even just within the snapshot of one cycle. And it's very hard to do against BTC when it goes through a cycle and altcoins have already been through a cycle. And B, the ones that do it, like that's a very small group, you know? And you could also do this experiment by going on like the Coin Gecko or Coin Market Cap sort of snapshot and just pick the cycle highs from previous cycles. You can do 2017, 2021. Not sure if you can go back to 2013. Probably find something earlier as well if you really want to dig. And those altcoins that are up there in the top 10, top 20, top 30 that seemed like the future at the time, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that given their price action and market cap, they're mostly irrelevant now, completely unrecognizable. And even if they've managed to stick around somewhere in that top 10, top 20, their performance versus BTC and versus ETH is absolutely miserable. So when you make the argument that, hey, meme coins, good for trading, you know, that's where the volume is, that's where the volatility is, so as a trader, you should gravitate towards that, but you shouldn't have multi-cycle sort of relevance assumptions about those same altcoins. You're not actually making any type of new claim. That's just how altcoins work. So that the part, you know, there's some stuff I've agreed with, some stuff I've disagreed with, like the retardation thing, the clarification makes sense. But one thing that I think shouldn't have been as controversial as it was essentially saying that these will have the same fate as other altcoins. And the burden of proof, again, I don't think is on you to demonstrate that that's the case, but that's the status quo. If anything, if you're holding a bunch of memes and think they'll be relevant in 2, 4, 5 years, you better have a damn strong case, because it's simply never been true for reasons that we've discussed previously, right? People like new stuff, people like shiny stuff, narratives move around, we always make up new reasons to like one sector over another, so on and so forth. And that just seems like a pretty uncontroversial opinion, or at least it should be, but I guess it isn't.
At the end of the day, the reason why I'm voicing my opinion so aggressively on these things is because I actually would prefer if people didn't get burned as hard as they're going to get with these things. Like, there's going to be a bunch of people back holding basically worthless trash, and they're going to be shilled into it by VC types that are saying it's a meme super cycle, whatever the fuck, that are going to dump on you. And I'd just rather not be like one of the people kind of just talking about these things as if they were gonna be anything other than like a pump and dump, right? It's a crypto wide pump and dump, and everyone is kind of looking at it being like, oh yeah, but this is just kind of what we've become now. And I think it's quite disgusting, honestly, when you look at it from that angle. And I don't think there's necessarily another angle to look at it. We've kind of, as an industry, surrendered to the fact that the most interesting sector right now in crypto is basically a ginormous Ponzi / pump and dump scheme. And it's quite wild. And I don't know why people are so violently defending it, because I don't think there's really that much to defend there. It's just basically a bunch of very greedy people trying to get other people into the market so they can dump on them. And the end kind of there's not even a little bit of promise, right? There's nothing to hide behind this time, which I think is not necessarily like that's at least honest, right? Like the meme coins, there's nothing hide behind. You cannot tell people that that's going to change the world, even though people are trying and people are actually believing it too. In comparison to previous cycles where there was actually still a little bit of positivity around crypto, where people are like, hey, this is actually really cool and it could change stuff and it could kind of drive finance forward. We have gone from that and have fully embraced pump and dumps and have fully embraced people just getting in it, getting as much money out of it. And then it's basically like, good for you. You managed to like swindle a bunch of suckers out of money kind of deal. It's wild. It's really, really wild to look at, especially if you like shut off Twitter for like what I have done for like a week or two, and you get out of that bubble and you just think about it without that whole noise, and you're like, holy shit, that's an industry right there. But yeah, that's just kind of my opinion. Obviously, like if people believe in the memes and the power of the memes and think that should be the future of finance, then fair enough. I just don't really see how that makes any sense.
Yeah, I may be too kind of reductionist in this, but for me, that's just memes aren't that different from everything else. Like even the argument that now there's essentially no veneer of industry or world-changing tech to hide behind. I think compared to the sort of speculation use case, even with coins that gave you sort of plausible deniability as far as the tech, it's such a minor effect compared to the sort of speculation element that no one in their right mind would take it seriously. Or at least historically, after your first cycle, you don't take it seriously. So the sort of reductionist point I end up at is essentially memes are altcoins, therefore all my regular assumptions about altcoins should be applied to this sector. And those regular assumptions, which are usually uncontroversial, is that you should trade them while they're hot. When they're not hot, they're going to go down a lot. Most of them will just like fade into irrelevance / go to zero. Even those that are sticky and come back or are around for multiple cycles aren't worth your attention to the same extent because they'll underperform relative to A, BTC and ETH, so they're worse on a risk-adjusted basis, and B, definitely underperform relative to new stuff because novelty goes hand in hand with speculation. Now, to me, that's just such a boring and uncontroversial take. I think essentially the reason that hasn't been the baseline assumption is we're seeing some form of meme coin exceptionalism where it's like, okay, meme coins are altcoins, but they're like different altcoins, therefore I should bin all my priors and what I know about altcoin trading. And maybe I'm an idiot, but I didn't see the case for it being that different for meme coins. If anything, given pump.fun and how people are trading on chain now, etc., the speed at which these things go from relevance into irrelevance and pump and dump or cycle to cycle, whatever, however you want to dress it up, that has gone up, if anything. And not to mention other mechanics of play that exacerbate that effect, like how easy it is to spin up those altcoins now, the net extraction effect, how it pretty much always just goes to Lambos, anything else, and the wealth sort of doesn't trickle down as it did in the past from BTC, ETH, high caps, mid caps, low caps, etc. Like in the best case, meme coins end up like other altcoins. And I think the worst case is that you get a more cynical, faster, more ruthless, more losers, fewer winners version of what you get with altcoins anyway. But to make the claim that they are A, materially different to altcoins of past, and B, in a way that's better and gives them multi-cycle longevity, to me that's such a fantastical claim that there's going to be you're going to have to present some pretty fucking strong evidence to convince me, and I just haven't personally seen that evidence. But maybe that's a bit boring. I don't know.
No, but the problem that I have with the cycle is basically like, even if you look at the projects that we got with DeFi and all that, like all those valuations, I mean, all of that went to shit, right? But we got some cool things out of it. The whole on-chain meta basically has developed from like cycles in the past, right? You had a bunch of projects. Price-wise, if you invested in any of them, you probably would have been better off just doing something else. But just generally, like, they drove the space a little bit forward, right? I think that's pretty easy to argue just based on how the space looks now. Like when you use like a DEX or when you use any of these protocols, you're like, oh, this is actually like a somewhat user-friendly experience in comparison to the past, right? I still remember trading on DEXs in 2017. And I was like, what the fuck? Like,
oh yeah, the crypto bridge, Ether Delta.
Yeah, Ether Delta, and like horrendous experience, complete and utter dog shit. It's very different now, right? But this cycle, like, what have we actually gotten? Like, what's the big improvement? And I would argue there's really none. The big improvement is that like our main characters of this cycle are probably all gonna stand in front of a trial, and there's gonna be a lot of people that launched kind of coins from like the US or other jurisdictions where that isn't as easy to do or as well liked as in other places, right? I think that's basically what we had this cycle. We're gonna get like 2 or 3 or 4 years of people basically getting fucked in front of the law, and crypto is going to look much worse than it did before. I think that's the big change to cycle, which is a little bit shitty, but is what it is. And I mean, like I said at the beginning of all of this, like, you trade whatever is hottest, and it's memes right now, so might as well. But don't delude yourself into thinking any of this has actually any value, because it doesn't, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah, well, at least we got ETFs as far as progress goes. But
I mean, that's not crypto native.
Yeah, no, tech-wise, no.
The boomers are actually driving the space forwards now, and we're just like battling each other, trying to take money so we can buy a Lambo. Like, it's not necessarily what I wanted to see. like years past. I wasn't like, yeah, the boomers are gonna come and then they're gonna clean up the space, like make new innovations and run with it. That's not necessarily the way I wanted it to go, but we'll take what we get.
Thank you, Larry Fink, for saving us.
I mean, imagine that. Imagine if that didn't happen this cycle. Crypto would be entirely useless.
That'd be. I prefer to live in a world with ETFs, Don. I'll say that much, given the price action. Yeah, I guess to wrap this point up, meme coins are altcoins. And unless you have really strong evidence to think that the entire way altcoins trade cyclically and just in general has changed, then you should treat them as altcoins without a kind of ideological allegiance to them, essentially. I don't know. Maybe the comments will tell me I'm wrong and there's something materially different, but I think at least the safest, most conservative assumption is assume that these are this cycle's hottest altcoins and all the consequences that come with it, essentially. So this is going to be the timestamp where people say the show starts, Don, because I'm going to open up TradingView.
Okay.
It's monthly close day, as mentioned. This is a pretty good monthly close for BTC. It's not bad at all. It looks like we're going to close by spiking previous month's low and closing above 58k. I think there are timeframes in which there is kind of resistance and a bit of choppy slowdown stuff on BTC, but the monthly kind of isn't one of them. I think above 58k, we're kind of in an all-time high chop area, and this range is getting a bit tiresome, to be honest. But you're not going to get strong bearish monthly signals above 58k, I don't think.
No, as long as on the monthly time frame, as long as 58k holds, I mean, it's a decent chart.
Yeah.
It is a little bit, and I mean, this is something I keep repeating, like when you get these immediate retests, it's a little bit worrisome in comparison to if you just go. Like we had an all-time high breakout and immediately retested the nearest support, which is a little bit of a sign of weakness, but it's not necessarily like just looking at the monthly chart. This can take quite a bit of weakness before it looks shit, right? Just based on the fact that it basically went from 16k to 70k in one straight line. So it's not as bad as it usually is, right? That immediate retest, but just thought I'd mention it. It's not something I necessarily like, but it's definitely not a bearish chart.
It's just like 10.7, Don. Look back at that monthly retest. It wasn't quite the all-time high, but same thing. Close 2 months where it seemed like this shit is really slow, and then the actual trend-forming move came. But yeah, monthly fairly straightforward, and monthly close I don't think generates a new signal by any means. The weekly time frame is quite interesting. This has been a bit of an agonizing range. I'm personally a bit tired of it, but I'm probably not the only one with range fatigue, which is a real medical condition. I don't really love looking too far to the left for levels on the weekly, sort of 21 and mostly 2021 beginning and end. I think there's just a lot of highs there that you can pick in a very subjective fashion and end up with slightly different conclusions. It's just a bit messy, to be honest, especially with that like all-time high fake out, so on and so forth, whatever. A few weeks ago, I put my eggs in the weekly cluster basket between the 67.2 and 69k, and that still seems somewhat relevant to me. We had a bunch of wicks at the lows and then rallied for the last couple of weeks. To me, the only real resistance level on the weekly, if it can be called that, given how close it is to all-time high, is that 69k, which is the cluster top of the weekly time frame, the range high on other time frames, so on and so forth. That's really the only all-time high obstacle from a weekly TA point that I have. And I think if it closes back below 67k and kind of rejects 69, loses 67, I'd be like, for fuck's sake, are we going to have to do business at the range low again? And then we can do another Casual Friday episode where you FUD it and then maybe it goes up, who knows. But I don't love the weekly time frame, but this is kind of the best of a bad bunch, I think, when it comes to weekly levels. Do you have anything radically different? And I mean, what do you think up here in general?
No, I'm pretty much the exact same chart. Like there's resistance at 69.2, and there's support for me at 60k, and that's it. And I mean, wherever it goes first, it's probably gonna be where the trend wants to go. Like if we break 69 on the weekly time frame, I think there's a good chance that it's gonna reach towards 80k next. And if it breaks 60k and we're still in that range, I think there's a good chance that we're going to go to the low 50s, if not a little bit lower.
So if it goes up, it'll go higher. If it goes down, it'll go lower.
Yeah, I think just generally, like, I mean, if it goes past resistance, it's probably gonna go higher, and there's no resistance left, right?
Sure.
And if it loses support, and this would, like, the thing is, what the reason why I'm saying it is basically because we had an all-time high breakout attempt, and if we start losing support after that, it legit feels like a false breakout, and then you would expect it to kind of just like people get disillusioned really fast, and you could still make new highs afterwards, right? But I think people would, like, if 60K breaks, I think a lot of people would start jumping ship just based on the fact that it was a false breakout attempt, and that would make for a decent buy, I think. And if it breaks 69, 70K, I think people are going to be like, okay, this was just it reloading. So you're going to see a bunch of aggressive position taking. And even if the market is not really there for it to go up, I think those aggressive positions could drive it up, like to 70, to 80K.
And there's hedges closing as well.
Yeah,
The range
basically.
high sellers, all the fun order flow stuff. Speaking of the range low, on the daily, we spent a lot of time talking about 60K as the range low. And it's been, I mean, depending on how you count, it's been tested at least like 6 times now or something, right?
Yep.
Like 1, 2, 3, 4, failed breakdown, 5 if you're counting conservatively, and way more than that if you're counting specific days or whatever else.
Yep.
The classic TA meme is that the more a level gets tested, the kind of weaker it becomes, because demand or supply at the level, depending on if it's support or resistance, tends to get soaked up. 60K has been defended like the market's life depends on it. And at times it looked pretty jumpy and tricky, but we are above it. Where do you think are the key, inflection points within this daily consolidation? So, for me personally, the best I can do with kind of medium-ish conviction is essentially a 61K to 73K range, just this entire consolidation going back to the very beginning in February. And that gives a nice midpoint of 67-ish, where the market's kind of, that's kind of a natural level as well, like previous breakout level turned to support. The problem, or at least one conundrum, is that if it loses the mid-range, and I don't like to, this is the classic don't diddle in the middle type of thing as far as the mid-range goes, but if it were to break, as someone who is religiously against buying 60K, would you rebuy this support, or would you do any business on the long side at 61K? Because it looks like we've had every single setup that's possible down there. We've had the quick wick taps, we've had several daily closes, we've had a failed breakdown, we had like a grindy consolidation. This level it kind of deserves to retire at this point as far as support goes. But so maybe there's no urgency to rebuy it if it goes there, or correct me if I'm wrong. But absent that, if someone's looking for positioning now, is it really a case of chase the breakout, or if it really nukes, buy that? Is there any range low business to be done, or any other levels within this consolidation?
I think the easy answer is no. I think you should treat 67-ish as your range low. So if you're bullish, just fucking buy 67. Right, and if that breaks, your range low broke, and you can get out of the way. Because 60K, the reason why I was hating on 60K until it broke, right, and then reclaimed, and I was like, okay, now it looks much better, right? And then it kind of did some choppy shit, and I was like, maybe it actually doesn't look that good, and then it just kicked around.
Bro, I was mentally bear tarding around that 9th to 13th of May. Because it looked like the reclaim looked shit, and then it was like a bearish retest essentially, and that's kind of where a lot of the memes came from, that the failed to break down, so on and so forth. I was like mentally bear tarded for those 3 or 4 days when the reclaim was really weak, when I guess I shouldn't have been buying instead, when I should have been buying instead. And ever since then I'm a bit like mostly ETH and old focus. But I just vividly remember looking at that cluster to the left when we were poking around it sort of midway and thinking, is this going to be a rug bearish retest after the reclaim didn't go anywhere? But that was some real choppy shit. That thing tested your patience, I think.
Yeah. Basically, I think that was like, just in general, like I got a little bit faked out by that easily. Just the market being a little bitch, or me being a little bitch, you never know. But the fact that we did all of that, right? The fact that we had a false breakout, and then like a false breakdown, and then we had like some sort of chop at the bottom of that range. I think if we go back to 60K, that's not going to hold. And I think at that point, we're going to go lower. So if you're a bull, you really just don't want to see it get back there. So you don't think, like, if you're bullish, you don't think it's going to get back there, right? You're like, I mean, if it goes back there, I'm invalidated anyway. So I might as well just take a trade high up. So that's why I say like the 67 to like 65K trade, like somewhere there. Like 65K is the last support that I have that I find like somewhat decent. Problem with that, and why I'm mentioning 67K over it, is that it would retrace the entirety of the 20th of May candle, like that big chad upwards towards resistance. Like if you start trading lower than that, it's like you basically break the impulse. It's not necessarily great. So I think 67 was or is basically the nearest support, and it's the support that has to hold. The moment that breaks, I think price action would accelerate to the downside. So you can basically take bets based on that level. If you're bullish, you would want to position bullish, and if you're bearish, if that breaks, maybe you can get a momentum trade to the downside. That's kind of how I look at this thing. I have a level at 68.3, and that's kind of what we've been trading around the last 2-3 days. We were consolidating above it for a while, broke below it. Yesterday, we had a little bit of rally, but that was stuffed and closed below that level again. And today, it's just kind of doing nothing. So that's the level that I have. It's currently resistance, 68.3. That would be good to flip for the bulls, and obviously bad to flip for the bears. So, yeah. 67K needs to hold, 68.3K needs to break. Otherwise, I think, things change. We're kind of in a very, very tight range right now.
Yeah,
like,
there's also
in a tight range, like we're in a tight range, right? Like
yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
To 62, that's the big range, and we have a really tight and tiny range, 68 to 67.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was going to make the point that there's a real risk of analysis paralysis here, that you're doing like a range within a consolidation, within a monthly, inside, all of this type of stuff. And you can just kind of zoom out on the daily and say that there's just been a long period of sideways. And historically, probabilistically, as a crypto trader, you don't make a lot of money when the market's moving sideways. Like, I think if you measured crypto average trader lifetime P&L and had some sort of trend type overlay on it, you would see that, I mean, most people lose money when the market looks like this. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to just mark out the actual extremities and say, I'm going to do business through or at these levels, and everything else, whatever, I didn't have an edge there, or the setup isn't going to resolve in the way I like my trades to resolve. I do think it's a nice contextual consideration, though, that the mid-range at this point, if you're ever going to diddle in the middle, it has to be, it's going to be when the chart looks a bit like this, simply because we've beaten up the boundaries so much. So, for example, if you ordinarily, the argument for don't diddle in the middle is that the range extremities provide better entries and they're more risk defined. But in this case, we've tested some version of the range high like 3, 4, 5 times. Kind of selling that becomes higher risk if you're on the wrong side of volatility expansion. And the same applies for support. We traded there like 5 or 7 times, and buying it, again, expensive if you're on the wrong side of volatility expansion. So if you have a strong view, this is one of those areas where diddling in the middle is loosely justified. I mean, I probably still won't do it, but I really like your argument that given how much, how war-torn 60K is, if the market's bullish and you want like cleaner levels, you don't want it back there. You want it carving out like a higher low within this consolidation, which is 66, 67K. That's nice. I think that makes sense. I think any lower time frame stuff, you just start losing your mind pretty quickly. But also in general, if you were to overlay this daily range and look at it on the 4-hour, it works just as well. That's kind of how compressed in one form or another volatility has been. So you could always transplant your higher time frame support resistance levels to lower time frames, and if your levels are good, they'll work fairly well. Just like that 4-hour between 61 to 67ish and the 70s, that's really nice. So still choppy though. Like if you zoom out, if you look at it on any time frame, this thing's moving sideways. Not going to miss out on anything super exciting at the moment. And then if you're in a position for volatility, you might have to do it at the mid range, given how much time we've spent elsewhere, but no super strong. I don't find this super interesting at the moment personally. No. And like it could do this for another week, and like the analysis wouldn't change, you know. Except it would just eat up your mental capital, which is a pretty big deal. ETH BTC, our favorite chart on Technical Roundup. I don't really know what time frame to start with. Maybe the weekly. I think you were tweeting about ETH pairs at some point.
Oh yeah, all I've been trading basically.
All you've been trading. Could you explain what you mean when you say ETH? Because you had some questions even on Twitter. People were like, what do you mean ETH pairs? Is it like a actual pair trade, like buy one, sell the other, and you're like delta neutral and capturing the spread between ETH and non-ETH pairs? How do you set that trade up? How do you pick assets? How do you size them? What do you mean when you say ETH pairs, and what does that trade look like?
I mean, ETH pairs basically like I was like, the moment we actually got the ETH ETF confirmed ish, right? Like that moment shifted basically, in my opinion, the entire landscape in a way where you're gonna see outflows from other things into ETH. But I wasn't entirely sure if Bitcoin was gonna hold up, because whenever you have like a bunch of flows into ETH, right? Like when you have just a bunch of people on the wrong side of the market and they FOMO chase ETH, what they usually do is they sell other stuff to buy it, right? It's not like there's an immediate influx of new people that come in and they're like, oh shit, we need to buy ETH. It's usually people from within the space that don't have any, that then kind of position themselves. So I was like, what I think could happen, and I mean, it did somewhat. We've been chopping on Bitcoin. We've been chopping on a lot of other things, and ETH's been going up. Was that we're going to see like a little bit like ETH BTC to go up, or just general, like anything ETH. So Sol ETH, I was betting on Sol ETH, as in I was betting on ETH in that pair. I was betting that Sol ETH was going to go down pretty much immediately when I saw the announcement, right? So I mean, you can throw up a Sol ETH chart, and people are gonna shit talk me again for for that trade, but I don't really care. So I was like, the moment that announcement came in, I was like, okay, I want to be long ETH, but I don't necessarily want to be long the market, because I think you could see some outflows everywhere else, even on the Bitcoin front, which would basically mean that ETHUSD doesn't go up as much as ETH BTC does. And then I was just like, okay, I think Solana, like the Solana narrative, takes the biggest hit from an ETH ETF. Solana's just kind of been overshadowing what ETH's been doing. Like everyone's just kind of assuming Solana's better than ETH. But the moment you have an ETH ETF, you're going to see a bunch of flows from Solana to ETH. And then I was just betting on ETH outperforming Solana. And then that means I didn't really take much market risk. I was just taking risks that I was wrong on that front. And it worked out quite well. Like this was a little bit of a shorter time frame trade, but the market didn't really move, and Sol ETH moved substantially. And that was basically the argument I was trying to make. And it was across the board, right? I was looking at all ETH things, right? And when you have an ETH narrative, you obviously get like ETH things to move. One of the ones that I was looking at that I didn't get a position in was Uni. I was like, Uni is going to be more interesting than the alternatives that exist. And I was basically just trying to take bets on the ETH things and hedge them by taking bets against the other things on other chains, on other on other chains basically. And that one I didn't get a position in, but basically across the market I was kind of looking at these things and making sure I wasn't too, because to me the market is quite hot, right? So I don't want to get like directional exposure generally. Like I think there's a good chance that Bitcoin will go down, or like at that point, at least right now, I'm still like, I think it's more likely that it goes down, but I'm not entirely sure. So I was just like, I'm very, very sure that ETH's going to outperform these things, but I don't want to take just directional ETH risk. Mm-hmm. And then I just took it in the way that I saw would be best, which was basically just betting on everything on ETH, betting against everything. Like Solana was the obvious choice, and then just took that across the board.
So essentially buy ETH stuff, sell Solana stuff. If the market goes up and ETH is stronger than Sol, you make money on the difference. If the market goes down and ETH is stronger than Sol, you make money on the difference.
Yes, and then obviously if you're wrong, right, and this is possible, because I mean I think the market's not necessarily always super rational, right? It could also just be that people are like, hey, ETH is going up, Solana is the more risky version of it, so that should go up more, and that can happen. So I could have just gotten like lost, even though like my like ETH USD could have gone up, but Solana USD could have gone up more, and then I would have just lost a bunch of money basically. But I was right on that one at least. I did close these trades already because, like I said, I had my wedding, so I was like, okay.
Allegedly. I wasn't there, so I can't
No,
confirm.
no, no witnesses on that one. But I closed these already, but I'm thinking about kind of like looking at them again once I've settled into my life again, and once all the gifts are gone through, all the like everything's cleaned up and all that kind of shit.
Sure.
So I think that is still a very interesting trade, and I still think people vastly mispriced things in relation to ETH. So I think ETH BTC, and I mean ETH BTC not necessarily even, but like other things, like when you compare ETH to Solana, for example, I think that's vastly just mispriced, and that might be where I'm going to look for trades, but I'm not entirely sure right now. I'm just taking it easy. But yeah, going back to ETH BTC, that's actually at resistance right now. That's why it's been like this week has just been basically a nothing burger. Do you remember the diagonal that I kept on talking about?
Oh god, I thought you were going to talk about 057 weekly. That's
Oh
what I
yeah,
just threw
yeah.
on.
I mean that is also one, but throw on the diagonal
Here
and
we
then
go.
you'll
Where does it
see.
start again? 1984?
Yeah. 2nd January in 2017.
2nd January.
It's actually really fucking clean.
Oh, I see. I mean, I've just roughly thrown it on, but I'm making it fit curve. I'm curve fitting it so it really
Yeah.
looks like resistance for your benefit.
I mean, I've had it the exact same way for years now, so and it's been very accurate.
That's
So we had
methodologically rigorous with your trend lines.
yes. So we had a perfect like retest on the 8th of January 2024 as support, and then we had another one on the 12th of February 2024. And then we talked about this on the show where I was like, hey, like you have a really nice trend line, you keep testing it like this. That's not necessarily the best, right? It's gonna break eventually. And it did. And now we're on the other side of it. And that's kind of where we've been struggling. That in combination with 0.057, which is the range low. But I think just generally, even if we get a dip, right? Like so if I'm right on my Bitcoin stance is more likely down than up, right? I could see if BTC actually take a hit too, for whatever the fuck reason. Like I said, the market's not necessarily rational. It's just like if risk disappears on Bitcoin, I think like a bunch of people are gonna get liquidated on a bunch of positions, and that could take even ETH BTC down.
And EPTC loves red candles. Just there's some real
Yeah.
analysis for you. You know, you give it half an excuse, it's all over that shit.
Yeah, but I think that dump, if you get one, and it's not guaranteed, if you get that dump, you would want to buy it just on a relative basis, because I think, yeah, the ETF meme is a pretty good one, at least for a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm looking at on ETH BTC. Technically, it would need to close above 0.057 to be bullish. So technically, if you're an ETH bear, this is a good place to be one. But narrative-wise, I think it's a little bit dangerous. And you should rather be looking on the buy side of it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just basically, I think ETH is mispriced against other chains that have been more in the spotlight lately. I'm not entirely sure if it's mispriced against Bitcoin. So I've been taking less of that trade and more of the other one. But yeah, so
Speaking
it's
of-
at
go on.
resistance. Needs to break that, and then we can talk about strength against Bitcoin as well.
Well, that's always the sort of final boss type of thing.
Yeah.
That sort of long-term strength against BTC, especially given how this trend has unfolded and how long it's been intact. That's a kind of a tall order, essentially. I want to ask about, I want to discuss ETH and mispricings and ETF and so on and so forth. So we talked about this not too long ago, sort of between ourselves, and it's pretty tricky depending on if you want to mid curve it, left curve, maybe right curve or whatever. So essentially, the ETFs were approved, right? Now there's obviously a process in place before they go live, but most likely, almost certainly, we're going to have ETH spot ETFs. We had a really good week on the announcement, and in general, price actions looked pretty good. But I think a lot of participants have sort of voiced their dismay at how this is moving compared to BTC, for example. So if you want to, like, the maximally bullish argument is essentially some version of the market had no time. The market wasn't expecting ETH ETF approval. So the market had to like radically pivot and reposition in order to essentially put on the ETH trade and catch a piece of it. And BTC, even though the ETF was like super telegraphed months and months in advance, we both managed to mega front run it and then even post ETF run even further. And so transplanting that argument to ETH, you'd essentially expect a equal, if not bigger effect, because you couldn't have front run this thing to the same extent because it was unexpected. And then you get the benefit of the live ETFs and the inflows that they bring with them and front running those inflows, so on and so forth. That's like the maximally bullish argument, right? The bearish argument is essentially some version of the market is overstating / overpricing the inflows that the ETF will get, and it's not particularly attractive, and its effect is dampened by the fact that we had a BTC ETF first. And in general, kind of the digital gold narrative is more attractive than, I guess, world supercomputer, digital oil, app, blockchain, whatever thing. And then also the ETF itself doesn't have staking. That was a kind of prerequisite from the SEC. So as a product, it's less attractive and less complete than the BTC ETF. And the third part would be there's a lot of ETH unlock type stuff that could get dumped on our heads, GBTC style. Now, those are the two extremes. I still think having ETH exposure into the spot ETF, even if it manages to capture a fraction of what Bitcoin captured, the price action was really fucking good, and that's kind of real demand that moved markets. So if you want crypto exposure, I think ETH plus ETF is one of the better combos available out there compared to most other things. And then you also kind of follow a regret minimization framework where imagine it essentially follows the same playbook as BTC, where like ETF, good, you get some weird sell the news chop around the event itself, but when it goes live, the buyers that come in and buy this thing aren't as clued in as we are, and they're kind of less price sensitive and don't really care. It's like, okay, this thing has an ETF, it's legit, it's crypto, whatever, I'm going to buy some, and then the number go up. And so you end up avoiding living in a world where you essentially saw the impact of the BTC ETF and thought, fuck, that's so obvious, I should have had more BTC, and then essentially FUD yourself out of a similar-ish trade on the ETH side. I don't know what you think about all of that. The only clear thing in my mind is I want to be at least somewhat technical oriented with this, because if the magnitude of the ETF is comparable to that of Bitcoin, this shouldn't have a ton of technical weakness. That would just be weird. I mean, if you consider how BTC price action was, that was like, again, a mega telegraphed event. And even on the day of the announcement, we couldn't even make a lower low close. The entire sell the news argument, you got like one red week. I mean, percentage wise, it was a nice move, but compared to what happened before and what happened after, it ends up being a blip in the mid 40s, right? Before we went up to 70. So I think if ETH is gonna follow a similar path, the technicals should more or less reflect that and not be super weak. And I think there's a pretty good daily level at about 3,600. That's the kind of former daily range high. And if you look at the 4 hour, that's also the 4 hour range low. Kind of 3,600, maybe down to the wick, 3,640, 3,620. I really think this entire consolidation structure that we're in right now should hold. And if you can get an entry reasonably close to the bottom, or at least optimize for proximity to invalidation in one form or another, or you could just solve this by having spot in the first place. You have to manage leverage. I think that's at least one of the more sort of reasonable trades out there. That, hey, I don't know, which side of the ETF coin this thing is going to fall on. Is it going to be more than Bitcoin, just the same as Bitcoin, worse than Bitcoin, a lot worse than Bitcoin, whatever? A ton of variables there. But if it's anything close to Bitcoin, which had kind of amazing price action, plus the ETFs themselves are mega successful, I essentially want a piece of that. And I think ETH 3600-ish, as far as the crypto landscape goes, is, takes that spot. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. One thing that I don't like about this in comparison, and you kind of mentioned it as well, compared to the Bitcoin ETF, was that basically Bitcoin ETF, like that came around and just, I mean, people were not necessarily like, I mean, people knew that this was coming, right? And they had a lot of time to position themselves, and price action was great regardless, right? With ETH, there was no time. It was basically the market was caught off guard, I would say, and price action was like a little bit muted for what it was. So I think there's a little bit more underlying weakness on the front than there was on the Bitcoin front. But yeah, I still generally agree. Like, I think it's one of the more like easier bets, the ETH bet, and this one that I intend to take whenever like there's an opportunity. And it does need to hold a few levels, like you mentioned. I think in general, like if it starts going below 3.4K, that starts looking a little bit shitty. Considering the magnitude. Problem with that is that if Bitcoin goes down, ETH/USD would go down as well, no matter how good the news are, right? Like Bitcoin leads this market, not ETH. And there's another difference in the two ETFs, that like you need the Bitcoin price action to hold up for the ETH ETF to do decent. And you didn't really need ETH to hold up for the Bitcoin ETF to do decent, right? So you have a little bit of like, you need to know where, or like you need to have Bitcoin play ball for the ETH ETF to make you money on the long side or on the short side, both. And you didn't really have that problem with Bitcoin. But yeah, I generally still think this is pretty straightforward narrative, and people are just kind of like memeing themselves out of positions because they're like, oh yeah, but if ETH gets an ETF, like Sol is gonna get one, and then you get this and that and that and that as an ETF. So like might as well buy those. To whoever says that, right? And I mean, we saw it last week, right? When you compare ETH BTC to Sol BTC, last week was a red candle for Sol BTC. That's why I said like the pair trade. Like I made money on both sides of that. ETH BTC went up vertically, Sol BTC went down. Not much, but it went down like 6% or something from open to close. But I see a bunch of people basically make the same argument that I saw the last time we got the Bitcoin ETF, as in we knew that we're going to get a Bitcoin ETF, and people were buying ETH because they're like, ETH is the obvious choice here because it's going to outperform Bitcoin. It's going to get the ETF next. And what happened basically was, and this is something that you'll see on the ETH BTC chart, is that you lost all your money, right, in relative terms. And I think that is very likely to kind of repeat with whoever tries to front run the next ETF, because I think a Sol ETF would take a while. I think that might be a good trade, but might be a good trade next year or the year after, not necessarily this year. And the same is true for like other ones. I've seen a bunch of people basically try to do the Doge trade. They're like, oh, Doge is the next ETF. Which fair enough, but then you need a little bit of Doge strength too, and so far we've seen none of that.
What about Litecoin, Don?
Litecoin, the same story. Like you need a little bit of strength, and then you can try to do that narrative. But as we've seen with ETH, that was literally down only until we actually got a confirmation on that ETF, right? So even if you're as late as you can be, which is literally the announcement of, right, you're gonna bottom tick basically. And I think that is not gonna necessarily change until until the market like materially changes, because I think the market has been trading not like it used to in the past. It's been mainly just like ETF flows driven on the Bitcoin front. Like it was, people were front running the ETF, and then it was ETF flows, and the rest of the market hasn't really gotten any of it. Besides like the odd outlier like Solana, like the Solana meme coins, but everything else has kind of been very muted, and I think that's because most of the gambling from outside of crypto, I think 2021 got a lot of people into crypto. Like a lot of people that would be interested got in 2021, got absolutely fucked. They still like kind of play around with it, but I think new people beyond those that have already had some experience with crypto didn't really get to do too much this cycle, and they haven't really been part in the price action, and you can kind of tell it's been very, very slow on everything other than the stuff that crypto natives promote as the next big thing. And yeah, that will change if Bitcoin goes towards like 100, 150K. I think there's a chance that it will. But so far, I've seen a lot of apathy on the front of like just new participants. And I think people underestimate how many people already did stuff with crypto in the last few cycles, right? There's a lot of people that lost money in crypto since basically 2017. And those are the ones that do stuff whenever it starts getting hot. And the ones that kind of ignored it for so long have been very, very iron-willed to just be like, fuck this shit. Like, I'm not getting into the scam. And I think this cycle isn't doing it any service, to be quite fair. Like the whole, like there's only so many people that you can attract with, hey, you can trade dogs on an exchange or on chain here. I think that's there is a limit to that.
And they can just go trade zero DTE options on Nvidia
Which is
earnings or
yeah.
something.
I mean, Nvidia, for example, has been outperforming crypto this entire time, right? Like it's not like that. It's not like there's no stocks that haven't been doing crazier things than crypto has. So,
Sure.
like people can get the itch of crazy returns in the traditional markets right now as well.
Yeah, but
so
do
the people,
stocks have dog shit rappers launching their own coins and dumping them during live Twitter spaces?
no, that's actually true.
That's a real use case.
Yeah, I mean the stocks. I think the rappers would be afraid to go to jail if they did this with stocks.
Yeah.
I hope they go to jail because they do it in crypto, but they usually just get a slap on the wrist. That happened before. It's not like this has not happened. Like I've heard of like a bunch of like basically like shitty celebs starting to launch their coins.
Mm-hmm.
Is it true that it's mostly on Solana? I haven't
Yes.
really caught up with it. Yeah, which is fucking hilarious. But yeah, I think that, I mean, it happened before, right? It happened in 2021, happened at pretty much every single cycle top in history, where you had like a bunch of people get into ICOs or
NFTs.
launch their coins, launch NFTs. This is very much a top thing. Like these people literally come in at tops. And this is why, like, I think generally, like, there's a chance that if you hold your meme coins from now to like next month or 2 months, that they're going to be up 2x or 3x. But there is a very much higher chance that if you hold your meme coins, that they're going to be down like 80% in a year or two. So you have to kind of adjust for that. I think the meme cycle is like at least off current coins, right? I'm not saying new coins will not make new highs or whatever, but I think off current coins, there's not much time left to milk those. So yeah, that's kind of my feeling on these. I think you have like at best like a month or 2 or 3 left to milk them. At worst, you don't have any time. But I'm not in the trenches on the meme coins. Couldn't care less at the end of the day.
Sure.
The only reason why I'm talking about it is because I tend to try talking people out of making like the dumbest financial decisions, and I've realized that that's a dumb thing to do because they're gonna do it anyway. And at the end of the day, if I'm wrong, I'm gonna get shit for it, and if I'm right, I'm gonna get shit for it. So might as well just shut up and see it happen.
Yeah, I think also when you were posting your trades, etc., on Twitter more recently, I saw a lot of commentary being like it was bearish memes the entire way up type of thing. And I think the trades that you took were your first time shorting meme coins, right?
It was,
Yeah.
I didn't.
So I don't. That's kind of been curious to me to see, and just in general, like we do this show a lot, and look, as far as in the trenches, this show is not oriented at that, right? We're not like on. We don't have deck screener open, looking at a million different things, etc. I mean, we'll periodically trade and look at the higher cap centralized exchange listed meme coins, but it's not a kind of in the trenches show. But that's a very straightforward admission that like that's not how I trade, not super interested. But that doesn't mean because I personally or you personally or whoever personally doesn't want to actively have a large part of their portfolio in a certain sector, that doesn't mean you're bearish that sector, right? Like if I choose to have Italian food over Chinese food or whatever, it doesn't mean I hate Chinese food by definition. It's just I've made a different choice. I could be completely fine with Chinese food, for example. It's just this weird logical leap, but it comes with building a kind of figurehead, right? So like if you're bearish memes at a certain juncture, they need to turn whoever the figurehead for a price move is into like a complete boogeyman. Like, oh, he's been bearish the whole way up and this and that. And you essentially build a caricature of a person, a straw man, to make it easier to knock down. And I was thinking about this earlier in terms of, the whole washed up OG type of thing. I think two things come to mind. One is that actual washed up OGs are the ones who are scamming you and doing a ton of like pre-sales and coin launches and are actually kind of more likely to be in the trenches, at least not in the at least as far as the scammier side of the industry goes. So that's like thing number one. And point number two, like I think in general, if you want to follow, you should have a mix. So like the OGs won't give you the so-called OGs. I hate that title, and I think it's like you need to be from 2013 to really have that. But the so-called OGs aren't going to give you the in the trenches most kind of, I guess, have the best pulse on the market, newest things. But they are fantastic for like multi-cycle perspective, risk management, multi-year expectations, because you can't like simulate that experience. On the other hand, the in the trenches guys, the kind of news cycle, whatever, they're a fantastic follow if you're like in the aggressive trading, wealth building part of your investment journey. But you should still listen to the OGs, if not for their kind of trench commentary, but for their like multi-cycle risk management mistakes they've seen, so on and so forth. Like you don't need to pick or choose. And I just think the washed up thing. I mean, if you want to see washed up, look at like the top meme coin accounts in 6 to 12 months, for example. Like that'll be a fantastic example of washed up. Or if you want a more present example, look at the fucking top NFT guys from last cycle, like the trench NFT guys. And get a sense of how quickly things change on that front.
Yeah, those were the heroes back then.
Yeah, they're the fucking heroes. And they were the ones onboarding all the celebrities and doing this and that and public OpenSea portfolios and all this type of shit with hundreds of ETH and now just fucking dead, Yeah. And somehow we're still here and not scamming yet.
Wait for it.
Wait for it. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward on ETH. ETF, good. Hopefully the market doesn't rug. If Bitcoin breaks down or something, and basically stay afloat enough for ETH inflows to come in, and then we can make an evidence-based assessment as to what those inflows are like, is there demand for this product, so on and so forth. I think technical level wise, 3,600, anything below that, just I think if the ETF narrative has significant legs, the nearest levels of support should be holding, and I think on the weekly that's 36. And then I've got 3,900 as a weekly resistance. You remember that level from the fake out, whatever, weekly highs close? I still think that's pretty good. So your choices are essentially breakout trade, 4K plus, or your invalidation is 3,600 aggressive, 3,400 if really you're being fucking generous with it. And then from a time-based invalidation, looking for a piece of ETF price action if we get it. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, it is.
Cool. Let's look at some alts quickly, because I know this show is running for a long time. And thank you for all the comments and tweets asking where we were. Wedding stuff, real life stuff. And also, just candidly, when all the Twitter stuff was like going down and there's a lot of boring trolling going on. I love like actual fun, good faith trolling back and forth. And even just like not trolling related stuff, but open discussion about what people think of the market and their positioning and all of that kind of stuff. I'm here for it. But when it's bad faith trolling where you like make up your positions, make up your opponent's positions, or say shit about like their family and personal life, etc. I kind of just mentally check out because it's just not it's not important enough or worth that, and that kind of just put left a bitter taste in my mouth as far as just like spamming content while that was the meta. So maybe I'm just a soft little bitch, but I'm yeah, that was essentially my reasoning. I don't know what you think of that, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, I do like myself. Like, I love it when you have a back and forth and like an actually like a decent one, and like even trolling is great. But yeah, this is like the saddest part about the whole Twitter discussion to me was how low quality it was. Because then, I mean, like you said, like people were making up positions that I had taken. Like for some reason, I was short Sol from $8. That's why I hate Sol, because I was short Sol from the bottom, like Pico bottom, enter the short. Or like all this kind of bullshit. Like I actually opened Twitter earlier just to kind of check, and I still get tagged in whiff stuff, and people like, you got liquidated on your whiff short, and I'm like, if you update stuff, like if you put stuff out there and actually like give reasoning and like just, I don't know, like this just seems like a really fucking dumb thing to do, like dumb tweets basically. Then I'm just kind of like, okay, well, what's the point, right? Like it's not like I get much out of Twitter anyway. And I do this for fun, right? And if it's not really fun, if it's like low quality garbage, and I think like honestly, this cycle's participants just kind of like, and I don't want to attack anyone that is not like this, but they're just kind of like very, very low IQ, kind of just idiots, basically. The loudest wins, and that's not necessarily fun. Like we had a bunch of trolls back in the days, just generally on CT, on like wherever really, where you could tell that they were really fucking intelligent and they just like to get a rise out of people. And that's like, I think that's quite cool. Like I like it when someone challenges me on like a level that might even like, even if I take it, right? Like I can take it and lose arguments and not have a problem with it. But if it's like basically like dragging someone down to like a very, very low level and then trying to beat them there because you experienced at it, I think that's just a little boring. Like makes no sense. And at that point, I'm just kind of like, why would I spend time on Twitter if all we get is low quality discourse? And I think that's basically what's been happening. I've seen Kobe getting a lot of shit as well, where he's kind of like very limited in what he posts. And I think it's just kind of sad. Like you take the people that actually don't put like what is called, like there's an expression, I think it's German though, like a paper in front of your mouth or whatever.
Can't say any of that one, but go on.
Yeah, no, but it basically means like you don't like make whatever you say pretty so everyone can agree with it, but you just say whatever you want to fucking say.
You don't pander,
yeah. But that is very much not wanted or whatever. And then people are like, oh yeah, but we want it. But the thing is, like, if 90% or 80% of the community is not like that, it's just not how it works, right?
Yes.
So
and it's unfair for our technical roundup audience because it's pretty chill, good faith.
For the most part. I mean, my streams have been getting lower in quality as well. In the comment section, like in the live chat.
You've got the channel in bio though. It's probably that people see that you're the bad guy. Click on the channel. Oh, he's uploaded a video. It's just lazy type of stuff.
Yeah. But
and also you can't win, right? Like to be
clear,
you
cannot.
You post analysis with like levels and stuff. So like this isn't actionable. Fucking dog shit. TA. Shut the fuck up or down. Yada yada. It's like, okay, I will actually just post a trade now. It's like fucking washed up, idiot, retard. You're gonna get liquidated and all of this type of stuff. So it's like, well, what exactly? So the content that you want then is either just like bull posting irrespective of conditions, cringe lifestyle stuff, fake philosophy, or fake trading education. That really seems to be that seems to be it. The unfortunate part is, and obviously I'm biased because I consider you one of my closest friends, and a lot of the stuff, like comments about like actual death threat DMs that you showed me, and comments about like your family and your wife, etc. I mean that is just unpalatably absurd. But the unfortunate part more practically is that if you actually read the threads with those trades, there's a shit ton that you can learn from them, like down to specific entries, trade management, changing your mind. Like, for example, if you held on to that Pepe short, you would have been fucking taken to the cleaners. But like, from a trade management point of view, in terms of just like actual live application of theory, if you read those trades and those threads, that's like the reality of trading, and it encompasses a whole bunch of stuff, like from entry to thesis to the trade developing to new evidence coming out, how quickly you have to change your mind, so on and so forth. And if you were to talk about it on a show, like, hey guys, or if you were to send out a tweet like, hey guys, I'm going to start tweeting a lot more of my trades and show you like practical real-time entry, execution, trade management, exits, etc., everyone would be like, oh my god, that's so fucking amazing, this is finally someone's doing this, etc. But when it happens in practice, especially if it doesn't align with popular positioning or consensus or whatever else, it doesn't go as advertised. And that's what I think, that's what I think is the great loss. There's a lot that can be learned from that process, and it shows the somewhat boring reality of trading and how you have to change your mind. It's not always, your 20R risk reward LARP tool type of trading, P&L card bullshit, but there's no real appetite for that. So
yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, a lot of people will be like, yeah, but we're here, and I don't want to complain too much. And I mean, I appreciate everyone that is nice, right? It's just when there's too much shit around, like the nice voices are more than drowned out, and even if they're not, like, I mean, what's the point, Like, if there's too much, like, if you go into a room and like 100 people are screaming and 2 people are like nicely conversing with you, like, it's just not like that room you're not going to be in for very long, right? And that's just kind of how the atmosphere is right now, which is fair enough. Like, I don't want to complain too much. I mean, like I said, I kicked the beehive myself, and I do deserve quite a bit of whatever the fuck people throw at me. Like, I do actually enjoy it. Like, this is a little bit of fun for me. But yeah, it's been sadly low quality, which is the thing that bums me out. But we'll see how that all kind of ages. I'm excited for the next, like, I don't know, like 2, 3, 4 months. Things are going to change quite drastically in those, I think.
You have to do it again, Don. Part 2.
Yeah, and we'll see how that all goes.
The macro top reloaded.
Oh, no, I mean, that call is still in. I set it at 67 point, like, something. We're trading at 68.3, and people are, like, acting like I was just kind of like, I called it at 16K that the macro top was in, which I find quite funny, because that whole argument, right, my argument is basically that there's a good chance that we're not going to go back above 73K. That's all that I'm talking about, right? That the top is already in. I'm not saying like whatever the fuck price action we're going to do in the 60s is going to be like this or that way. I don't know like that. But I think there's a good chance, not like 90%, but like a decent chance that we might actually not take out 70K before we take out 60 and go to 50 or even 40K.
Great,
but
what a depressing note.
But I mean, I could be wrong on that, and that's okay, right? Like, this is just my opinion, and I have been wrong in the past. So doesn't really mean anything. It's just what I like, my mental model for this market, given how it's trading and given how people are acting in it, is one of where I think we're a little bit on a timer, in the sense of that the longer this stupid like rappers are promoting Solana scam coins and yeah, like all that kind of stuff goes on, the worse it's gonna get, I think. But who knows? At the end of the day, maybe this is the super cycle. Meme super cycle, we're all going to infinity, and
perfect.
Yeah, the world is changed by whiff.
Finally, I'll make some money then. We can jump into news and discuss altcoins in more detail on Altcoin Thursday.
I actually got to run.
You got to run?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you've got that. Yeah, you've got an appointment. Well then, maybe I will discuss the news solo. But no, I won't. I'll wrap it up, and then we can do a catch-up episode on Thursday and do some of the news stuff as well. For what it's worth, the news-related stuff was JP Morgan warns of negative spot ETF reaction because the product is a bit shitty and there's a bunch of ETH and it got front run.
Cool.
The crypto flows got front run by BTC.
Yeah.
Interesting. Biden campaign ramps up crypto industry outreach. I was just going to do a spiel on how you just don't trust these politicians who pander and pivot to issues just to get votes in the short term. And the third one was Caitlyn Jenner's X account promotes Memecoin amid hack concerns. And that whole discussion of, I think, trying to give celebrities the benefit of the doubt that they're engaging in good faith, and essentially some version of Ansem's argument that they're a good means to onboarding, they just need better education. I don't think celebrities deserve that good faith given their history of scamming, and several of them have done NFTs in the past, meme coins in the past. They don't deserve that good faith. If you want to learn about crypto, just learn in public, go buy some shit, stake some shit, ask some questions. Going for the easiest low-hanging fruit money extraction, defending that type of behavior, I think, is a net negative. Ta-da, the news is done as well.
Sick. Yeah, I actually agree with all of that.
Fantastic. Well, this show is easy then. We'll leave it at that. Leave us a comment if you missed the show, if you enjoyed this episode, or if we're wrong about everything. We'd definitely love to read those comments. Thank you to Woo for supporting the show as always. Very good centralized exchange. Links available in the description below. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.